Gentlemen, thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate your time. Jeff, maybe we'll start with you and go around the horn on what Joey meant to each of you personally and for this club.
You know what? I've known Joey 17 years. He was a bright light. As we all probably know, like, sometimes it was pretty tough with the Oilers. Like, we've had some bad seasons, but Joey was, a bright light in the room and always positive, nice to have around. He's always smiling, joking around. The players loved him. I can't say enough about him. It was great to have him around.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce Shane Olmsted. I apologize. In my Zoom meeting, it didn't have his video up on board. So Shane as well. Shane, maybe we'll jump onto you and on what Joey meant to you personally.
Yeah, Joey, like everyone else says, was one of the best around. And for me personally, there's a lot of time in the laundry room doing, folding towels and that kind of stuff. Not the most exciting stuff, but whenever Joe was around and helping us out, it was always a good day.
TD.
Oh God, yeah. Well, like Langer, I known him for 17 years. Knew about him for a lot longer than that, but I started with him over at the Eskimos. And the thing I've been saying to most people when they ask about him and thoughts about him and stuff is that, whenever he was coming into a room, whenever he was in a room entertaining people, or whenever he left a room, everybody was smiling. And there's not a lot of people that can do that. And Monster is one of them. And he wouldn't even be in the room, and you start talking about his stories like we have been the last few days, and people are laughing and having a great time. And no one ever leads up and ever said, well, geez, Joey, I wish he wouldn't have done this, or I wish he wouldn't have done that. It's always, remember when Joey did this? Remember when we had this conversation? And within minutes, seconds, whatever, people are laughing. And that's what I'll always remember about him, is made people smile.
Yeah, there's a couple times Joey's done things and we've all said, I can't believe Joey did that. Yeah.
we can't believe, but not that we wouldn't want him to.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Brad.
Oh, yeah, I met Joey 10 years ago, and like I said before, the first day I walked in there, he's like, hi, I'm Joey Moss. Welcome to the team. And he welcomed everybody with open arms. He cared about every single person. Sometimes he forgot their names, but he cared about everybody that came through that room. And even when they left, he cared about them too. And the biggest thing with Joey too is he cared a lot about his family. I thought that whenever he talked, whenever he gave speeches, it'd be about my family, my family, my family. I think all of us on this call here are almost part of his family because of what he did for us, and the smile he put on our faces every day.
Davie, what did Joey mean to you personally and for this club?
I would say that when the question got asked, the first thing I kind of thought of is kind of like the glue guy, kind of like what Langer was saying, of just like he brought everyone together when it was a bad game, a bad month, a bad year, whatever. Joey just seemed to be that guy that kind of brought everyone together, made everybody smile. And I think kind of like what TD was saying, obviously Rogers Place is pretty big. And when Joey would enter the room, like far away from my desk, and I'm sitting at my desk, you knew he was there. Like it was just someone came in the room that it's just like, Joey's here. And then he makes a big entrance. He stops in the training room, and then he goes into the kitchen, and then he comes around, and he's just like this big introduction and waving and goofing off, and like everybody's saying, just a big smile into people's face. So that's one thing that will definitely be remembered and missed. So
Davie makes a great point on that too, Tony. He'd show up at 8 o'clock, and I think he'd be dressed at 11. He'd have to sign on in the dressing room. Davie says it'd take forever for him to get through the dressing room.
Yeah.
He truly did have one of a kind energy. Farmer, what did Joey mean to you?
Joe meant a lot to me over the 23 years that we were together. He was everything from my boss to my mentor to the pain in my side at certain times when he of all the things, Joe knew what was going on. He knew how to get my goat, and he enjoyed doing it. But Joe meant a lot to a lot of people, and he was just so special in the fact that, like the guys have said, he lit up a room. Everyone knew him. We would, after a game, in the third period, I would go up and get Joe with 2 minutes left. It didn't matter what was going on the ice. Joe stood up, walked across toes, spilt beers, moved popcorn, whatever it was to get from in the old, where his seat was in the old building, to get to the stairs, to come back so that he could be on the tunnel when the guys came off the ice after the game. Whether it was a win or a loss, Joe's mood depended on that, and it was a reflection of it. But I've taken so many pictures of Joe with, if there was a girl, he would gladly take a picture at any time. If we were losing or we lost and there was a guy that wanted a picture, it was no way. But he always made time for a picture with a girl. And we've all been sharing memories over this last few days. And there's pictures of him kissing the girl that came up to him in the stands the one day, and just stuff like that. And I was talking to Sean, and I said, you know what? Joe was so special in the fact that everybody, whether they're in the city of Edmonton, whether they're with the Oilers, whether they didn't do with it, everyone feels they knew Joey. Whether it was through things he'd done, singing the anthem, whatever it was, they all felt that they knew him in some way, shape, or form. But I don't know if very many people actually knew Joe, like the players do and the coaching staff do and our group does. So he was just really special that way. And Joe knew what was going on, whether it was not sure if he knew that he was dressing himself out of Happy or Langer's lockers some days because they were on either side of him. And you'd go in to check on him, but it was taking him forever to change. And all of a sudden, there's Joe wearing Langer's clothes instead of, or Hap couldn't find a shirt and Joe was wearing it. That happened on more than one occasion.
So Hap, we know he dressed in your locker from time to time, but what did Joey mean for you?
Well, I've been around Joe for 20 years, which started at the Edmonton Football Club. And he's the most special person that I've ever met. He can, any mood that you come in with, he can change it on a dime. And you can chirp him as much as you want, and he's got more one-liners than you can imagine. So I've been his dad, I've been his son. My name's Happy Moss. He made lots of fun of my hair until I had no hair, and then he had more fun making fun of that. He was great with my family. He was very good at remembering people, especially at the beginning. He was very proud of recalling who ex-players were. We used to play a number game, who wore number 4, who wore number 8, things like that, and trying to tease him, trying to get him because he'd get all stressed out, but really he probably knew more people than you would ever know. And so part of it is that a lot of us wanted to be like him because he affected everyone positively all the time, and everyone wanted to be around him. The first guy you want to see in the morning, and at the end of the game, big win, have a cold beer. Every day was a celebration. And if we played poorly, that was okay, because tomorrow morning Joey's going to be the exact same, and bring everyone back up to being positive and focus on the day. And in our environment, what we really need, we really needed Joe to help us with those, with the big picture. Just have a good time.
Speaking of games, how about the animal game?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Hey, the animal game with Ryan Whitney.
Oh, what's the animal game? You guys got to chime us in on this.
So you want to play, Tony? You want to play the animal game?
You want to play the? What? I'm not sure if I want to anymore.
So the animal game goes like this. We'll all play it. I'll go cat.
Dog.
Just have to name an animal.
Yeah.
Just got to
name
name
an
an
animal,
animal.
Tony.
He would beat people in that game. So people would say snake, and then they'd say snake 10 times later. They'd be like,
Really?
you lost. Come on.
Yeah, he won every game. No matter what happened, he won every
sure.
game.
He never gave anybody a chance because he'd go cat, lion, brr, 1, 2, 3, and then he'd hands up and it would be over.
And it wasn't just Joey. It wasn't just Joey and one other person. When it was announced that the animal game was going on, the entire room would gather around and the animal game, and two guys would sit there and square off, and then the whole group of trainers and other players and whatnot would stand around and just call away on saying the same animal twice or whatever. So it was a group.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. But I want to jump on one thing Hap talked about. He talked about his ability to chirp, and a lot of people when they first met Joey Moss, they weren't sure how good his chirp game was, but were rather surprised to see how much he really dished it out and how much he could really take to. Any of you guys have stories of some of his infamous chirps?
Well, first you have to be around him long enough to understand Mossanese, and then so you can understand what he's saying. But anything where him saying if you combed your hair with a pork chop or a chair leg or call you Mr. Big, or he'd always say you're a good guy, look good, better than me. He just always had lots of one-liners, but right now I'm forgetting some of his chirps.
Like that, I know the first day I met him, or not first day, later on, I'd walk in and he'd come in with this ugly green shirt, and I'd be like, "Nice shirt," and then he'd right away, "Look at your hair," and I'd be like, "Just quit!" Like one-liner. He's ruthless. He's almost made me cry sometimes. Hey, Seth?
Well, throughout the week, whether it be on local radio stations, here on EdmontonOilers.com, or on a great article Sam Gagner published for the Players Tribune, there seems to be one constant memory when it comes to Joey: his love of wrestling, and more specifically, the WWE. Did he challenge any of you to one of his infamous wrestling matches?
Nope, not me.
Really?
Because
he
ref sometimes, so we didn't know.
He went after it with George LaRocque, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, he had some pretty legendary matches, and he was going full out. There was no, he's on it. Like anything went with him. He's seen it on TV. He's seen those guys do it, so he was doing the exact same thing, not realizing that they're somewhat, not playing as hard as Joey would, but yeah, there were some big matches here. Yeah.
And unfortunately, it wasn't Andrew Cogliano or Sam Gagner that got it. It was Dustin Penner or Steve McIntyre or Luke Gazdick, or he wasn't going up.
Sutton.
Yeah.
I always remember from it.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Harry.
Langer can contest. I think guys before didn't wear a jock, and then when they got later on, everybody started to talk. Oh yeah, Joey would nail you in the darts too, and so Andy Sutton, Luke Gazdick all started wearing jocks for the wrestling match. I remember the one we got Andy Sutton, Langer and Chano. We were just watching it, and he came in with baby powder in his hand. He's walking to Andy Sutton, and he throws it right in his eyes, and then Andy's and he jumps on him. Yeah, go ahead, TD. Sorry.
No, I think I always remember is at the end of the match, there's only two ways. Obviously, either won or lost. But when he won, he was jumping around. He had the belt. His hands were above his head. Then when he lost, everybody had to bring him into the training room. He had to get his treatment. He had to get all fixed up. He was hurt, and we would take about 3 minutes and check him all over and say, "Okay, all right, Joe, you're good to go. Up we get," and then away he'd go.
I remember he used to crawl into your medical room after the fight. He would just crawl in at Rexall. He would just crawl in the room like he's barely alive.
And we'd have to pick him up and prop him on the table and do a little quick checkout and make sure everything's good. And slap him on the back. All right, Joe, he gets up. Nothing happened, and away he goes.
Well, we know he was a big wrestler against the players. I guess I thought one of you guys might have had at least one wrestling match among you guys. But was he a prankster at all? Did he play any pranks on you guys or the players?
I don't really recall. I don't know. He was always like those one-liners were the ones that would kill everybody because the players or a staff member or coach would say something to him and he would have something quick remark and be right back at him. And then it'd be the other person would be like, I don't know what to say. He like wasn't expecting a reply, right? So
Yeah,
it
didn't matter who it was. He would go after anyone. That's what surprised me the most. It didn't matter who said anything, coach, player. He would just go right back at him.
No. I was telling this story the other day with when I think it was Farmer and Langer. We were at Rexall, and the Undertaker came in the room, and he started to chirp the Undertaker because of his brother Kane. So he's giving it to him, and he's like, "Your brother doesn't like you," and all this stuff. And Undertaker's like, "What?" And then I think it was Kimbo Slice came in and stole Joey's belt and ran down the hallway, and he started yelling at Kimbo Slice, "Give me my belt back!" And yeah,
that's amazing. One of the great stories that were shared this week was by Ryan Smith, and he said whenever any player kind of accomplished a great feat like Sam Gagner did with his 8-point game against the Chicago Blackhawks, Joey would always be the first one to grab a beer and sit with the player and kind of celebrate with him. Just maybe want to hear some more stories inside the dressing room that maybe us on the outside didn't really get to see or experience.
One of my favorite stories I was thinking about when we were talking about doing this was last year training camp. Joe didn't come around much after training camp. His health had kind of deteriorated to the point of where he was confused and it was hard for him to be around the room. But anyway, so we picked him up for training camp and we'd set it up that I would pick him up in the morning and I get to his house and he was still asleep. So I knock on the door in his room and he jumps out of bed right away and he sees me and greets me as he did, and then he realized he has no t-shirt on, so he covers up his chest thinking that I'd actually seen something, and then in his high-pitched voice goes, "Oh, Farmer." You know how he used to do that all the time, and so get him dressed, get him into my truck, and we're talking on the way to the rink about how it's so good that Sam Gagner is back with the team because Joe loves Sam and Cogliano and Tom Gilbert were so good to him when they were here. But we're talking about Sam being back and how good it is to be seeing Sam every day and then we get to the rink and get Joe changed. And of course he had to have breakfast because nothing started. And if Joe was hungry, until he had his coffee and his breakfast, nothing got done. So set him up at his usual spot at the corner of the table there in the new room and getting him a plate, set up of food. And James Neal walks in and Sam had just walked by, said hello to Joe. Sam was on the first ice group. So he went to the fitness area to warm up, and James Neal grabs a bite to eat and grabs Joe a coffee, puts it in front of him. They sit down and talk, and he asks him a couple of questions. And then he says, "Joe, who's your favorite Oiler ever?" And without even the faintest hint of any thought going into it, he goes, "Taylor Hall." Joe liked Taylor Hall, but Taylor Hall was not Sam Gagner or Wayne Gretzky or Dustin Penner, the guys that spent a lot of time with him. So James Neal just yells out, because it's an open ceiling to the room, and he goes, "Sam, you got to hear this." So Sam comes back, and Neal asks him the same question, and Joe gives the same response. Sam could not have been. He went up and down Joe like nobody's business, saying, "Oh, what have I done to you?" He goes, "I'm going to throw you in the cold tub." So that was just one of the stories that, as much as Joe, I think he did it as much to get Sam's goat as anything else.
Yeah.
So. But
that's a tremendous story. Any other stories inside the locker room? That was definitely a good one there, Farmer.
Well, I got a couple. Well, the one thing he brought up the Joe Moss needing to eat and needing a coffee. When I first got there, I couldn't believe it. Joey would pour himself, like at the old building, well, even here too, pour himself a coffee, and he'd always go, hot coffee. And I'm like, well, of course it's hot. It's coming right out of the pot. Well, he would take it and put it in the mic for 1 minute and drink it afterwards. And it was like, everybody would be like, he can't do that. He can't do it. And then that was me at the start. But then after that, no, don't worry about it. He can handle it. Yeah, he'd put a coffee in the mic for 1 minute after pouring it out of the pot and then drink it. He had to have a hot coffee and cold beer. That was his two things. And I got one other little short story. We were sitting in the lunchroom at Rexall, and Joey would always have a bagel in the morning, so he would have. He'd always like to put honey on the bagel.
No, you're going.
We never. So Joey would get there. Guys would get on the ice. He'd get on the ice. The boys would get on the ice. Joey would sit down and have his bagel and his coffee because he kind of a little bit of break for him. And I seen him pour the honey on like I seen him do hundreds of times. But then out of the corner of my eye, I see him. The honey always drips down the side. Like you can never get away with it. The honey drips down the side. He licks the honey off the lid. And I'm like, oh my Lord, did this really happen? And I'm like, Joey. And he looks at me like nothing phases him. He just went, what? And I was like, oh, we got to throw this away. And then I had to tell everybody because he's been having honey like that for a long time. So not even knowing any different, right? But yeah, that would be my. There's a few more, but I'll let the other guys. I'm sure that Savvy and Chano, they got some good stories. I think they want to tell.
I got a water bottle filling story. We'd have the Gatorade in a jug on a trolley out by the bench, and he'd come over and fill up all the ones that got emptied during practice. And but I've only seen this once. You come around the corner and the lid is off the Gatorade container, and he's taking the bottle and filling it to the brim, and then putting on the lid and putting it back on the bench. And I'm like, what?
Happy, what's wrong with that? We used to do that way back in the day.
You don't want to get wet when it's cold like that, right?
I think a lot of trainers did that back in the days. It was just the way it was done. Nobody knew any different.
No, he also showed how if you got the Gatorade, it was too thick in there. You just
that's how we learned it.
And get that orange Gatorade swirling and put the lid back.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Langer kind of put Savvy and Shaner on the spot. So if one of you guys want to share a story here.
Well, I don't. It's tough to follow these humorous stories, but I like. I'm going to say back in the day, but when Barry Stafford was around, they would sit in the hot tub. Like someone made note of as how good. Or I think it was Harry that how good Joey was like who's number 4, Taylor Hall, or even they'd go back like Kevin Lowe and who's number whatever, and it was like you wouldn't even know who I wouldn't even know who this person is because it was from way back, but they would just. Barry would quiz him in the hot tub. And I don't know if it was Stu Poirier, the massage therapist that I took over for, but one of my jobs became when I was going on the road that I would have to get the game notes from every city that we'd go to. So if we had a 6-game trip, I would have to bring back these 6 game notes so that Joey could, I'm assuming, study the players, but he wouldn't study the opposing team. He would just be studying the Oilers. So why I had to get a game note in every different city was how it was interesting that if we were on a 6-game trip and I only brought back 5, he would know. And I was in trouble for not getting him all 6. and then if he was being bad or if I wanted to discipline him or whatever, I would say, well, I guess I'm not going to get you the game notes. And he would just lose his mind. Like, no, the game notes, please give me the game notes. I need the game notes. So that was something that I kind of took over. But then it got to the point that we'd get back from a trip and he wouldn't ask for the notes and I would give them to him. He's like, oh yeah, good, thanks. And then the next trip I'd bring the notes again and he wouldn't even ask for them. I'm like, you know what? I guess it's, my duties are done. So those are some good times.
That's excellent. TD, Harry, or Shane, do you guys have any other Joey Moss stories that you'd like to share?
Go ahead,
Or
Shane.
Harry does.
I got one. Yeah.
I got one, and it's not super humorous, but I remember back when we did our outdoor game with this group in Winnipeg, and it was an afternoon game, and the sun was shining on the ice, and so it was starting to melt the ice. So therefore, they had to put the tarps on, and they delayed the game. So players are pretty routine They get there early, they're doing their things. They find out, maybe an hour, half hour before the warm up that we have to postpone. So guys are half dressed in their underwear, they've kind of started workouts, but they stop. So then everyone starts accumulating. And at that, it was a football stadium. So we had the dressing room in one area, and then you go through the door, and it was like a training room that was kind of in a larger room that had a kitchen at one end. And so we ended up slowly over time, guys didn't know what to do. So often they'll kind of be attracted to the training room, have round stoves. So next thing you know, there's Joey Moss, and he's just taken over the whole room. We started doing the number game. We started doing the animal game. He started doing arm wrestling with I think it was Eric Greiba. And that's the next thing you know, it was all about Joey. People asking questions, do an impression. What does this mean? And they would just talk to him. They'd throw things at him. He'd throw things back. And without a question, 45 minutes, an hour goes by, and it was just the Joey Moss show. And that's just another reason about how he brought the team together. He was kind of that glue. He would just be that. Everybody wanted to be in that room. Like I know that there was a couple videos have gone out, but if you would have seen that room, there was probably 20 some players and some coaches and all the trainers in this one room listening and having fun with Joey. And that's a cool story. I'll remember.
That seems to be a common theme throughout the week. Everyone talks about it. Everyone just kind of gravitates their way. No matter where you are, you always gravitate towards Mr. Moss. Harry or Shane, the floor is yours if you guys would like to share another story.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah. So either myself or Farmer would be in charge of getting Joey dinner on game nights. And it didn't matter what it was. You could put anything in the box and he would love it. And anytime you asked, he would always say, yeah, it's good. It's dog food or cat. And anytime, every meal, dog food or cat food. It was hilarious.
But he would crush it.
Yeah, he would lick it dry.
So I got a couple. Sebi can elaborate on this one a bit more, but we always like to gamble a little bit in the room too, on NCAA pools and the NFL pools. Ebbs would always do it. And he'd go, okay, Texas Tech, Alabama. And then Joey would sit there and go, Alabama. And he would pick. And if you lost to Joey Moss, you'd have to pay Joey money. So he won, and Sebi would be able to answer it better. Even the NFL pool, he'd win some weeks, he'd lose. Everybody's like, I don't know anything about NFL. Or Joey would win. Sebi, how many times has he won?
Yeah, it was Sam Gagne, and then it became Jordan Eberle that would kind of lead the pool, and he'd be Texas Tech against Alabama, and somehow he would find a way to combine both those names into one, and it was just okay, what team are you actually picking? Then you'd go through, and if you didn't beat Joey in the whole NCAA pool, you had to pay him $20, and I'm actually proud to say that I am the only one that ever had to pay him $20. So no.
My other one is it goes to what Farmer said before. Like, he was smart, man. He was smart. So I remember the one time I was at Rexall, we had a little change room there, and he'd always talk about his keys. Oh, I got no keys. I lost my keys. And there'd be Langer, Farmer, Hap were in there, Seb was in there. We're all trying to find his keys to get back into the house, right? We can't find him. And we're literally all of them looking for him. Like, each pocket he's got, his jeans, his boots, his toque, his hat, his jacket. So we can't find him. We can't get back in his house. So I remember he came and slept at our house that night. So we get home, driving home, nothing. Get all the way to the house. We're walking up the stairs, and he goes, Harry, they're right here. He knew like that they were in that little pocket in the jeans where all your change would go, and he knew where they were. As soon as you got into the house, I just wanted to sleep over.
Yeah, he would honestly do that. He would just want to sleep over at your house. Yep. He would do stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, but us 6 guys couldn't find him, and he outsmarted them.
He's a mastermind, and you guys were all just playing his game. I absolutely love it.
And he loved work too. Like, we'd be having a beer in there after folding towels, and we'd be like, "Oh, you're done." "Oh, I'm helping." He helped right in there folding towels. He liked to work right to the end.
That's excellent. Let's go around the horn one more time, guys, and this one will be relatively short. And Savvy, I'm going to put you on the spot to start us off, but If each of you had to describe Joey Moss in one word, what would it be?
Oh, geez.
I know. Sorry for putting you on the spot there, buddy.
Happy.
Farmer?
Entertainer. He loved the limelight. He loved the camera. He loved everything about being the one in the center of attention.
Hap?
Friend.
Harry?
Legend.
Langer? I think that says it all. TD?
Honest.
Shane?
Genuine.
And I think that was everyone. I myself, Harry, I'm gonna copy you too because I wrote mine down before this interview, and that is legend. And with this interview and so many more this past week, we know the legacy and the memories will live forever here in oil country. Thanks so much for sharing some stories, gentlemen, and rest in peace, Joey Moss.
We're going to miss you, Moss.
Love you, Mosser. Thanks, Tony.
Love you, Moss.